All right. So welcome today. I'm talking to Patrick Szajner, who lives in Canada and Toronto. And I met Patrick on X last fall in 2023. And I think the first time we met was on a space where we simply were writing something, right? I think, yeah,
Mm,
yeah. And ever since, I have truly enjoyed his writing and everything that he does on X. And when he shares his poetry, it's actually absolutely magnificent. High degrees of relatability. And I've been on calls with Patrick also after that, and truly enjoyed talking to you. So I'm happy that you're here today, Patrick.
Hey man, I appreciate that intro.
Yeah,
That was a lot of gas you just poured, so thank you.
yeah, absolutely. So Patrick, when I think of you, I think poetry.
Mm.
So tell me, when was the first time you started writing poetry? How old were you? And how did it come to you?
I think it actually started with like more lyric writing. Um, I was in this group for kids. I think I was in like the sixth or seventh grade by then, but we were all smart kids. You know, they said we had a lot of potential and whatnot, but we're all kind of troublemakers, right? Like I wasn't doing my homework. I had anger issues. Like I just wasn't keeping up, like living up to my potential as they saw it. So it was like a kind of group led by a guidance counselor. And we would just go once a week or something and talk. And then she had a student teacher one day. And this student teacher just one day asked me, like, do you write poetry? I was going, no, really? And she's like, you should try it. And then I was like, cool. And I tried it. And like I said, it was more lyric writing. I was a big fan of like Korn at the time and lots of heavy music and like lots of dark music. I used to get a Korn CD like when my parents were away and I had the house to myself for a bit and I was the only one there. I would put the CD on and pretend I was Jonathan Davis, like performing a concert and like play the whole CD. And so then I just started writing my own lyrics. That turned to music. Like I started drumming in a band, and then I picked up an acoustic guitar and did some singer-songwriter stuff. And then I was a vocalist in a metalcore band, so I was screaming and growling. And then I went back to the music stuff. And then I was in college. The first go around I went, and I was taking a media arts course, but I towards the end of the program, you had to pick electives, and I picked a poetry workshop just because, you know, I write music and whatever. So like let's get more into poetry. And the final assignment for that class was to actually write a piece and perform it for your classmates, right? We were going to go to the college pub on campus and rent it out for our class and just read poems to each other. So I started writing a draft, but I don't know. I kind of wanted to get more of an idea of how to do it, and thankfully YouTube was a thing still, like already at the time. So I just typed spoken word poetry, and the first hit that came up was a poem by who is now my favorite poet, and I've had the privilege of like working with him one on one, Buddy Wakefield, Convenience Stores, and I heard that poem. And, you know, good spoken word poetry, I think, has a musicality to it. Like even though there's no music to it, the words, their cadence, the flow, and how they move in and out of each other, like it can sound really musical, and it was really powerful and sounded amazing. And then I just kept watching and watched a lot of like Def Poetry Jam and Poetry Slam competitions and all this stuff. And like, I think I was up until 4 in the morning watching all of this. And then I scrapped the thing that I was originally working on and like wrote like two pieces in 3 days. And the assignment was still out like a couple of weeks or a week or two, and I couldn't wait to jump on stage and do it. So I found an open mic. I got a couple of friends to come with me, and I just jumped out, and it was awesome, man. Because like one of the first things I noticed is like for in contrast to doing some guy on stage with an acoustic guitar singing, people kind of tend to treat that as background noise and like they just have their little mini conversations through it. Where and I didn't mind, like I was fully expecting that, but like when I did the poem, it's like there was not a single person talking and it was cool and everybody was like resonating and I felt like this energy in the air and I was connecting with people. It was dope. It was really dope. And so we end up doing it for the class thing, and some people asked if they could do two poems, so I also asked, and I got to do both the poems that I wrote, and it went really well. Uh, we went back to class from the pub, and while everybody like got their stuff that they didn't want to bring with them, and Professor Bruce Hunter, he he told me to hang back, and like as I'm thinking about this as a 36-year-old, it's funny how overly dramatic it was. But like back then, I guess I kind of thought it was badass. So like I guess it was fine. But like, so I'm expecting him to, tell me that was good or something, or ask me some questions at least or whatever. And like, he just like, so I'm the only one in the class and he's just not saying nothing, putting his books in his bag. And then he walks out of the classroom and is just like, keep doing that. And that's it. That's all he said and left. I was like, oh, okay. Like I was, like I said, back then it was super profound, but now I'm just like, man, did you have to be that dramatic? And that was the last class. That was the last time I ever saw the guy, last time he ever said anything to me. And I never saw him again after that. But yeah, I did it for a few years and then, played any dive bar or open mic or whatever. But I don't know, life kind of does its thing and like you get older and my job situation wasn't secure or ideal. I wasn't making anything close to good money and then my pops passed suddenly and I just kind of drifted away from the poetry for a really really long time and started slowly getting back into it a couple of years ago. And funny enough, before I joined X, Money X, which was Money Twitter at the time, and everybody was a copywriter or a ghostwriter doing it for 5 minutes and making 10K a month. I was thinking like maybe I'll try to make a push, grow my Instagram account with some poetry and like try to maybe turn it into prints and sell it. Like I don't know. Um, but then again, these beliefs of like, bro, like you need to make some money. Like go find like a legitimate business or something. So I hopped on Money Twitter and like just wasn't finding a rhythm trying to do anything. I had no idea what I was doing. Still don't, to be honest. But in the back of my mind, I was always like, because people were talking about, authenticity and you know, being you and not copying and whatever, building an authentic personal brand, all the fucking shitty buzzwords. And I kept thinking about it, but kept talking myself out of it. And then one day I just shared sauce and it got really good reception. And it was like, well, that's a good sign. I mean, there was some stuff that happened before that like pushed me to finally share it on X, but yeah, so now it's like, well, I guess that's kind of a signal to keep going with it because that was my first time actually sharing it with as wide an audience because it's one thing to do it at a poetry open mic or like a regular open mic. Like people know what they're there to see, but like I'm throwing this stuff on Money X with all the, fucking alpha bros and I had no idea what the response was going to be and but it was dope. It was good, man. I had accounts leaving comments that I wouldn't expect to leave comments. Like it was really cool. So it was great to see how it resonated. And like I said, it was kind of the signal I needed to keep going with it.
So tell me, when you got into poetry or writing in general, but then specifically poetry, what happens to you when you write? So what is it like? What kind of what happens? Like what when you sit down and write, whether it's on a whim or whether it's planned or whether it's whatever happens to you. Why do you write?
For me, like one of the best parts of writing is like when I'm getting something out of my body that A, I know I need to get out of my body, and B, something that I can feel will have like a good chance of jumping into other people's bodies and resonating with whatever they're holding. Like it's I guess it's cathartic, right? It's and then there's also, if I come up with something particularly clever or just like that I know is a bar and just is gonna sound really good, like there's a sense of accomplishment in it. Um, Especially if you get a reaction. So like if I'm writing something and I think it's gonna hit and then it does hit, like that's just cool, right? But I think for me it was more when I saw people doing it. So when I found Buddy and Anis Majgani and Reeves and Andrea Gibson, um, their poetry did something to me. Like hearing their words in a particular way and beyond how skillfully it was all put together, like it made me emotional. It made me feel something. And with that also comes, dopamine. And uh so it's being able to recreate that for other people that is also really rewarding and just feels good, man. Like it feels good being up there. I probably love performing the poems more than I love writing them, to be honest.
Hmm.
Like once I get it done, I love being done. And then I know it's been edited and there's probably not much more we can do to make it better. And then I get to just do it for people. Like that's the payoff at the end.
I I listen to you. Something that comes to my mind is what's his name? See what his name is. Rick Rubin. I'm sure
Yes.
you have read the book, right? So you take
Yeah.
something that you have from within yourself and you offer it to the world. It's a kind of a communication, but it's also a gift to the world, which also enables me who listens, who reads what you have written or what you perform, it sits with me and it resonates deeply with me and it actually does something to me. So what you offer me then, you're offering to the world is, first of all, it's to open up to that creative energy, I guess, that you have within, that longing that you have within. And in writing, you are moved yourself. So and in performing, so again, then even more so, as you suggested now, as you described the experience. So you're transformed, you change, something happens to you, you process your emotions, you go through a cathartic experience, you put your you have a perspective on some specific topic or a theme or something that happens within yourself or in the world, and so you offer transformation. And that
Hmm.
kind, first you transform and then you perform it to me, you offer it to me or to any reader or audience, and the same happens to them. That's quite powerful.
I appreciate that. That's the first time it's been broken down like that. Maybe it's been said in different ways, but um, it's a joy to hear for sure. And like I said, the connection, that connection there is powerful stuff. Like it's hey, I can do that. Like that's wild to me. That like even in my earlier days, when people would come up to me and tell me like how much they enjoyed it, that's a gift. There's no other
And
word for that. Like,
yeah,
it's powerful stuff.
it's a gift you have, and it's a gift that you offer to the world. I have another thing that I remember. Like, have you seen this show on? I think it's on Amazon Prime. About I forget the name. I'm so bad with names. It's Lord of the Rings kind of thing. It's a prequel to Lord of the Rings. I forget the name. I can check it up and put it in the notes later on.
Hmm.
But there's a conversation between Elrond. So he's like in the Lord of the Rings movies. He's the high one of the high elves, and he's one of the main guys among the elves. And even in this situation, before he is like a king or whatever, he still talks about elves, how they bring beauty to the world, and without beauty in the world, what will happen to the world? They're really concerned because they already then, this was like a few thousand years before the Lord of the Rings plays out, and they're concerned if the elves, if they leave Middle Earth, what will happen to the Earth, because they bring beauty to the world. They bring something new, a new perspective, and it's the soul of of Middle Earth. If that goes away, then it's just fabric. It's just not fabric. Uh, it's just boring. Life is just boring, right?
Mm.
So that's just something that I think of when I listen to you and what you have to offer. But it is a gift. It is a gift. It's a perspective. It's a gift. It's a transformation. It's a kind of an emotional communication where I feel what you feel, and you're able to do that with me, to me, and hold me through that process, right? So your gift is truly unique, and I would love to hear some of your poetry if you would like to read it for me and for the listeners.
Yeah, sure, brother. I guess I'll do this is I haven't released this one anywhere yet, so I think it's next in line. And this was like the second this was the second piece I wrote after a long hiatus, and it's special to me because Buddy Wakefield actually edited this one with me. Like um, quick note before he likes what I learned from him is a thing called the gold mine, right? So if you ever you can just free write or write to a prompt or whatever for a couple of minutes and then go back and just see what resonates with you, and you hang on to all these like loose lines, and then what you can do is you can put them together. So one day, this was when I was like really early, I had no idea like how to start, but he took some of my lines that were in a gold mine that I had, and he's like, look, you can do this, and he got it started for me just based on what I had already written, so it exposed a new side of it. So anyway, I wrote this one. There's some of his edits in here, and it's called. It's about my wife. It's called A List of Reasons They Haven't Named Any Storms After You. The fastest ever recorded wind gust was 253 miles per hour. Gave the ocean a Napoleon complex and sucked the prayer out of sinners. I missed you was all it took to do this. Pull the sky apart. Every kite string in the world turned to harp, the shape your mouth makes. My family spoke in avalanches, slow throat rumbles and royalty swords, but you were born in a carnival with sour candy bottle rockets, tornado trumpets and funk, wind gusts through a screen in April. I need to tell you something. The first thing I ever learned about the river is how much it wants to know my hands are clean. The worst thing I ever learned about myself is how scared that makes me. That's where you come in, needle healer. Stick me with your whisper tips and carve initials in my wood liver. I want to dance with you to the sound of Roman candles and horses holding midnight on their backs. Hurricane tempo and elbows, trees bent like harmonica notes, like all we ever needed was the weather. Like all I ever needed was to hear the storm blowing through your vocal cords. So I built a boat out of wind instruments, hung a strip of your light from it, and named it The Closest I Will Ever Be to God. Because the closest I will ever be to God is tsunami waltz off a cliff with foxes at our heels. A pile of shipwrecks, splinters, and you in the middle of it, arched like a golden gate and shaking like San Francisco, changing the weather, whispering I missed you, fastest ever wind gusting from your lips, a prayer from my.
Wow. Ooh, I feel like I'm on a boat right now.
Hey,
I'm on a boat right now. I'm close to God. That's
that's
amazing,
that's
man.
that's where I was going. I appreciate that, man.
That's,
Yeah, I
yeah,
wrote
close to
that.
God.
I was listening to like two or three. Uh, when I write, I listen to songs on repeat, and there's an
Yeah.
artist, Slow Meadow. I first started listening to a song called Ships Along the Harbor, and then halfway through the poem, I started listening to a song of his called Hurricane. And my wife actually ended up walking down the aisle to Hurricane when we got married in September. So yeah, that one was a a special one to write. It was cool. I got a lot of lines in there I'm proud of.
Hmm. What do you feel when you read that poem?
There's a lot of things, man. There's obviously, the love I have for my wife that came through that and carried that. There's there's the reminder as well that like I can make something like that special. Like I can express that in a way that, people will resonate with and people will vibe with. Because that was still when I had like pretty low confidence in coming back to poetry. So the fact that some of those lines came out was like it's kind of like assurance, like, no, you got this. You can do this thing. So it's just a mix of love and love for what I do with it.
When I listen to you performing it, and I think performance, it makes a huge difference, right? If I were to read it, it's a different experience than listening to it,
Mm.
and simply listening to it while looking at you also like that also makes it's a different experience. I felt like the speed that you were reading at and the words and the rhythm, that I was brought out into the ocean. First I saw for some reason I saw sand, I saw a beach, and then the winds were going fast, and then the hurricane was picking up, and the clouds were getting darker and darker, and then I was all of a sudden out on a boat, rowing boat, and then some lightning also. I don't know where that came from, and I felt a sense of hurry. As you continued, I would probably have had some tears being released also. The sense of hurry, like a sense of hurry that I'm going somewhere very quickly, and I felt like constricted and trying to catch my breath, and then I could catch my breath, and in that stress, in that hurry, then you bring in like closer to God, that sentence, and then I was like, okay, it's okay. I'm in a hurry, and there's a hurricane, but still, there's some kind of calmness in all of this. So that's the experience that I had when I was listening to you.
That's uh, that's
Yeah.
really interesting. That's really
Yeah.
it's funny, man, sometimes, like especially when I do like when I perform for people, I want to tend to go someplace else, right? Like and so I wasn't reading that. That was off the top of my head. But then it's like I can't remember if I said all the lines right like I know I said them right, but now I'm like, did I skip a few lines? But like it's really like I just get so into it that I kind of lose the moment of it because I'm almost going off of like the emotion of it and I stop thinking about what words are coming out, especially for ones that I've done repeatedly. Like I've done that one a few times now at like open mics and whatever. Um, so yeah, I guess I'm just circling back to that first question because it just hit me like sometimes I just kind of I get lost in it and then all of a sudden the poem's done and I'm like, what just happened?
Where do you write from? Like, do you have to be in a state of like melancholy, state of
Yeah,
right?
melancholy
That's the
is a good one.
melancholy,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. So like what I'll
Yeah.
do is I'll put on some like vibe music, writing music, just something, no lyrics, just like instrumental, whether it's bands like Bal Maria or the Album Leaf or like I mentioned Slow Meadow, there's This Will Destroy You, all sorts of like ambient rock or just contemporary classical, things like that. More often than not, I'll smoke a joint or just vape or something, get high, because I find that helps. I don't edit myself as much. I just kind of let the thoughts go as they. And then sometimes I catch a wave. Sometimes like what happens a lot of the times too is I don't even know what the words are, but like I'm making sounds in my head, if that makes sense. Like how would the rhythm flow? And even like sometimes if I catch a song and a song makes me feel a particular way, that's when that song stays on repeat and I'll just keep writing to it. And it's almost like I will never do it to the music because I don't know how the licensing works. Like I would do it if it was fine. But I'm writing to the music even though I'm not necessarily going to stay with the music once the poem's done, is what I mean to say. So yeah, just like anything that gets me like in a state of melancholy where I feel some sort of emotion that's like coming out, like it's there, it's bubbling. And other times, man, it's just like I'll some line will pop in and I'll stay with it and then I'm not particularly feeling melancholic, but it's just like I've caught a vibe and just riding it to the end. But yeah, 9 times out of 10, it's the first way.
Amazing. You said you stopped writing for many years,
Mm,
and life happened.
yeah. Yeah, we so I was like working at the time at this bar downtown. Uh it's actually a big entertainment complex. Like there's three actual venues in the one building. And I was really how I ended up as there is like I was really sick of sales and I just had to get out and my roommate at the time, who was a good friend of mine as well, he was working for the guy who bought the building from his brother and was gonna like relaunch it and like do some renos. So like I worked there for a while and it was long hours and shit pay. Like man, I even like one day I worked 23 hours straight for minimum wage. Um and it was just like a mess. Like I wasn't in a good spot mentally either. Um and I think like this was I was still touching base with writing at least, but like, I had some minor substance problems and whatever. So long story short, I like moved back home for a bit, sort myself out, and then I met who later turned out to be my first wife. But we end up getting engaged, and I'm like starting to think about like I can't keep working at this bar forever. Like I got to go back to school and like get a career. So I did that, and then my pops died suddenly, and so like I was living with the my ex at the time, but then we moved back into my mom's building. My dad passed away to be closer to her. Got married, started working for the bank like the same month we got married. And then it's just that was it. Then I just kind of adopted this life of like, well, this is my life now. I have a full-time job and I go to work and I come back and do things with the wife and like poetry, just kind of music, everything. It just kind of slid away there. And yeah, I just fell into that 9 to 5 trap, right? Like for many years, where it was just like go to work, come home, play video games, and or do something with the wife, or go out for drinks, and then get drunk on the weekends, and then just next thing you know,
Yeah.
uh, many years like we got divorced. Then like many years had gone by. I'm with my new wife at the time. Just the anxiety and the panic attacks. I started having panic attacks when I was 16, and the panic attacks started coming back. And so I decided, to try some things. I tried acupuncture. I joined combat sports. I got a therapist, and that helped for a while. But like, I was always jumping from thing to thing. Like before Muay Thai, it was soccer. I was obsessed with soccer, and like so essentially everything except writing I got into. And I realize now, looking back, that I was trying to, like, whenever I got really into a hobby, I didn't just get into that hobby. I almost made it my whole identity because I was lacking an identity. And I wasn't really cognizant of this at the time, of course. So, like, in between, just doing the regular life stuff, I knew I needed more, so like I would just like latch on to whatever, but eventually the drop it and move on to the other thing and move on to the other thing. And then it was we're in the middle of COVID now. And I'm doing a year-end evaluation, and it hit me like, well, shit, like I don't know what to put down for what I did this year. And then from there it went on. I've just been kind of going through the motions of this and uh, just letting life pass me by. So actually ended up working with a career coach who through doing that and like the process they take you through, that's when I remembered how much poetry meant to me. But I was still at this point where I actually believed I wasn't going to be able to tap into that again for some reason. Like, I don't know. I just had this belief that, like, I don't have it in me anymore. I lost it. It's gone. I don't know how to do that anymore. So, that took another year or two to get out of my system. And it was actually my joining Buddy Wakefield's workshop. I saw a workshop of his advertised, and it was through that. But yeah, it was like an 8-year span where I just didn't write anymore at all.
How does writing help you? Like, do you think that it's important to shield, protect, guard your creative energy? That practice, because it's a practice, right? You have to practice. Unless you practice, it's not there. It's almost like an unused faucet. If you don't use it, it's going to like get ruined, or with time, it's going to get rusty.
Mm.
But it's always there. The second you tap into it, it's like, oh, I forgot I had you there. See?
Yeah, that's it, and that's exactly what it is, and I know that now. I know like writing has something to do with what I'm supposed to be doing or what, my soul wants to be doing. However you want to phrase that. I realize that now. So yeah, it's definitely important to like keep it up even on the days where maybe I don't feel like it and just but still like I just try to write a bunch of gibberish at least because at least I sat down to get something. And yeah, I think the key there like it holds the key somehow. Maybe it's not necessarily poetry, I don't know. Given the feeling that I get when I write something that resonates or helps someone or just entertains someone, I know it's going to be part of that genius you were talking about. I know it's involved in it. And now, even though poetry is always going to be a part of it, I think it's also finding a way to to build my life around it in a
Yeah.
way that I can be sustained financially and mentally and fulfilled, I guess.
But you lose track when you perform poetry, at least, right? That's what I got from you.
Yeah, man, I go like,
You go to the seventh dimension.
yeah, it's just, and it's different, man. Like, to be honest, I don't enjoy doing it for the camera as much. Like, there's got to be at least one live person in the room to vibe with it. It changes the dynamic so
Of
much for
course.
me. But maybe I can find a way to tap into that energy of people before the people see it. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, like if I get in a room and I just start like finding that pocket, I almost feel like I should try to correct this because I feel like I should be there when the words are spoken, but I just get so lost in the emotion that was there when I originally wrote the poem. It's like the words are coming out on autopilot and I'm just there vibing in the feeling, which is then why I'm like, did I even say some lines or did I forget some or what happened? But yeah, it's yeah, that's the vibe.
What's creativity for you?
The expression, well, no, for me, it's the expression of something that didn't already have something devoted to it. So like for me, it's words, right? And I know there's all sorts of creativity where you can think outside the box to solve a problem or whatever, but for me, it's creating. And for me, it's really based around getting feelings and like what the feelings that we don't already have words for. How do we put them into words that still probably don't capture it 100%, but like do the best job that they can that exists on like this plane of language? Because like language is a funny thing because like for example, if you were trying to my wife's Brazilian, so certain things here or certain things in my poem might not translate the same in Portuguese, and likewise something written in Portuguese might not get that one-to-one translation. So it's all about if you have such this disparity of language, then really you just got to operate on feeling and try to evoke the same feeling the best way you can, which is what I'm sure poetry translators are doing when they translate poems into other languages. So, how can I trigger feeling? How can I trigger emotion? How can I express my own emotion? This thing that I'm feeling that I don't actually have a word for yet. But what phrase can I can I find to wrap this up that, or maybe it's something that has a way to say it, but it's been said 400 ways already, but like you still feel it and you still want to get it out. So how do you find a new way to say the same feeling? So yeah, it's about bringing some sort of shining that spotlight on whatever you're feeling, and like this could be through painting, this could be through writing, this could be through the song, an instrumental, but it's conveying emotion, I think.
Is the process healing?
There's some degree of healing to it, yeah. Sometimes it can be even a little harmful if you're not in the right mindset, right? Like if you're in a too judgmental mindset, then you start talking down to yourself, and then you then it's counterproductive. But yeah, it's definitely cathartic and healing. Like when I sit there and I think of the feeling that is in me, and like I start getting choked up, and like I can feel that emotion coming to the surface, and then I find a way to take that emotion, slap it into a phrase that sounds cool, and have people relate to it. Yeah, that's absolutely healing.
You have another poem for us?
Yeah, this one's a little shorter. I This is just a silly one I wrote, kind of. This is one of those ones where, like I said, I just kind of sat there and it came out, and then a couple of quick edits and it's done. It's called Boxer's Fracture. If you would have told me way back when that wrapping my fist around Andrew Souza's hyena face would mean breaking the neck of my fifth metacarpal, would mean my hand getting neat whiskey stiff every time I gripped a pen, would mean I couldn't get through more than a few stanzas before I switched over to keys or stopped writing entirely, I would have done it anyway. I just might have worked on my form. It's a fun little story about the time I punched Andrew Souza in the face in grade
Yeah,
three, was it? I think it
that's
was grade three.
yeah, amazing. So how do you memorize the poems?
So typically when I write, I think it was Hemingway who said there's swoopers and bashers, and you want to write like a swooper, right? You want to just get the poem out and then edit after, whereas a basher will, like, the poem won't move until the line that is currently being working on is perfect. More often than not, I am very much a basher. When I start to see a poem coming, then all the free flowy stuff ends up stopping, and I just fucking stay there. And part of that process is, like, let's say I have one line of the poem, I'll repeat that line and then like maybe just mumble some stuff, get the sounds there, whatever, try to think of something, but I don't move on until I get the next line, until it fits. So I mean, doing that is half the memorization as well, because like I'm repeating the same lines back to myself and hoping the next one just magically vomits out of my mouth. So like by the time I get, halfway through the poem, I've memorized almost half of the poem because I'm just repeating it back to myself. Um, and that's most of it. Other than that, it's just, going line by line. Even like, let's say I get a poem down quickly, like that last one. It's just like get a few lines, say them until like those ones are good, and then add the next one, next, add the next one. It's just repetition in the end of the at the end of the day. It's like how do people memorize the lyrics to their favorite songs? Like they just hear it long enough and they sing along to it, and then all of a sudden you know a song. So there's nothing to it. It's really just repetition and getting it out. And that was the first time I did Boxer's Fracture like out loud. So that's I had that
Yeah.
little hiccup there. But for the most part, yeah, once you do it enough times, like it just comes out. They're up there.
Patrick, where can people find you if they want to get in touch with you and read your poetry?
Shiner the writer. On X, on Instagram. I'm not on TikTok yet, but I will be trying that. Shiner is Shiner, even though that's not how you spell my actual name, but how you spell my actual name is kind of fucked up with the Z and the J. So I just spell it phonetically for people. So Shiner the writer, everywhere, all one word. And
Awesome.
yeah,
Thank you so much, man. I enjoyed this conversation a lot.
hey, me
And
too.
I wish you all the
Thank you for
best.
having me on. Appreciate it, man.